Before science, before logic, before schools, there was one man who refused to accept stories without proof. He didn't ask the gods for answers. He didn't trust myths. He trusted the human mind. He studied everything: life, power, truth, happiness. He trained a boy who would conquer the world. And he built the rules that still control how you think today. This is Aristotle, and this is where real thinking begins.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the mind of one of history's most influential thinkers, Aristotle. I mean, this guy's work was so vast, he pretty much invented entire fields. Logic, biology, political science. And get this, for 2,000 years, if you were considered educated, it meant you knew Aristotle. But this isn't just a story about some genius in an ivory tower. No. This one sentence, it tells a whole story. It's about a star student who had the guts to challenge his legendary teacher, Plato. And that single act of intellectual bravery, it kicked off a revolution in thinking that literally shaped the next 2,000 years of history. So picture this, for 20 years, Aristotle is Plato's student at the famous academy in Athens. You'd think they'd be on the same page, right? Nope. Their ideas about what's actually real were complete opposites. And this one huge disagreement, is reality found out there in some perfect abstract world, or is it right here in the stuff we can touch and see? That question would go on to define Western philosophy itself. All right, so how did this epic showdown of ideas actually play out? Well, it all boils down to a really simple question, one we've all probably asked ourselves. How do we even know what's real? Okay, so Plato's take was this. The world we see, feel, and touch, it's basically a cheap knockoff. It's a shadow. He believed there was a higher, more real world out there, a world of perfect ideas he called forms. So, take a circle. For Plato, the idea of a perfect circle, the one you can't even draw, that's what's truly real. Every circle you or I try to draw is just a flawed copy. See? It's a total top-down way of thinking. You start with the perfect idea in your head, not the messy stuff in the real world. And then Aristotle comes along and just flips the whole thing on its head. He's like, no way. He argued that the only way to understand what a circle is to get your hands dirty. You have to go out and look at all the real, messy, imperfect circles in the world. For him, the essence of a thing, its whatness, isn't floating around in some other dimension. It's right there, inside the thing itself. You want to know what a horse is? Go look at some horses. And this led to his truly revolutionary method. It's basically the blueprint for science. Instead of just sitting around and thinking, he created a step-by-step process. Step 1, do your homework. Review everything that's already been written on the topic. Step 2, figure out what the main argument is. Step 3, use hardcore logic to break it down. And finally, step 4, organize and classify everything you've observed. I mean, this system, observation, logic, classification, this is the foundation of the scientific method we still use today. Okay, so once he figured out how we can know the world, Aristotle moved on to maybe the biggest question there is. What are we supposed to do while we're here? How should we live? And for him, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical game. He wanted to create a practical guide. And he kicks this off with a simple but super deep question in his masterpiece, The Nicomachean Ethics. He asks, what's the ultimate goal of human life? Think about it. What's that one thing we're all aiming for? The end goal that everything else we do is just a step towards? His answer? A single Greek word, eudaimonia. Now, you'll often see this translated as happiness, but that's not quite right. It's not about feeling giddy for a moment. It's way deeper. Think of it more like human flourishing or living your best life. See, for Aristotle, everything has a purpose, a function. A knife's function is to cut. A good knife cuts well. So what's a human's unique function? It's our ability to reason. So for him, a flourishing life is one lived using reason and aiming for excellence. It's about being the absolute best human you can be. So what are the ingredients for this good life? Well, it wasn't just about sitting in a room and thinking deep thoughts. It was a whole package deal. You needed to live virtuously, using your reason. You absolutely had to have deep, meaningful friendships. It helped to have your basic needs met, health, a little bit of money. And, crucially, you had to make time just to think and contemplate. And he was dead serious about the friendship part. Get this, he spent a fifth of his entire book on ethics just talking about friendship. A fifth. He basically said nobody would choose to live without friends, even if they had everything else. For him, it was completely non-negotiable. Okay, so if that's how an individual flourishes, what about a whole society? It's a pretty logical next step, right? Aristotle just took his same method, observing, classifying, and applied it to how people live together in communities. And in doing so, he basically invented political science. And again, unlike his teacher Plato, he wasn't interested in dreaming up some perfect utopia. He was a practical guy. He had his students go out and collect information on more than 150 real-world governments. Then he sorted them all out using two simple questions. First, who's in charge? One person, a small group, or everybody? And second, are they ruling for the good of everyone or just for themselves? Now, this is where you might do a double take. Take a look at that corrupt column for when the many rule. What do you see? Democracy. Yeah, you heard that right. To Aristotle, democracy was a corrupt form of government. He worried that the poor, since they were the majority, would just rule in their own self-interest. It's a real shock to our modern ears and a great reminder that the way we see the world isn't the way it's always been seen. But we have to talk about the darker side of this belief in a natural order of things. It went way beyond politics, and frankly, this is where we get to the most troubling parts of his philosophy. His views on society were incredibly hierarchical, and these ideas were used to justify some terrible things for centuries. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat this. He believed women were, in his words, unfinished men, and he argued that some people were just born to be slaves, that it was their nature. These views are, without a doubt, a huge ethical blind spot and a really, really problematic part of his legacy. So, how do we square that? Well, despite these massive, deep flaws, you literally cannot overstate Aristotle's influence on history. His ideas became the absolute bedrock of thought in both the West and the Islamic world for hundreds and hundreds of years. So after he started his own school, the Lyceum, his writings were actually lost to Europe for a while. They were saved and studied by brilliant Islamic scholars, and when they were eventually brought back to Europe, they became the curriculum for universities. It really wasn't until the scientific revolution with guys like Galileo that people even started to seriously challenge his science. For 2 millennia, if you said the philosopher, everyone knew exactly who we were talking about. And that leaves us with a really tough question, one that's super relevant today when we look back at historical figures. How do we balance the groundbreaking genius of a thinker with the massive moral flaws of their time? Aristotle tried to map all of reality, but his map had some huge, ugly holes in it. Figuring out how to deal with that complexity, well, that's a philosophical question I think even he would have enjoyed chewing on.
Thank you for watching. Knowledge grows when curiosity stays alive. Follow this channel, press like, and subscribe for more ideas worth thinking about. And if you have questions, leave them in the comments.